The field of biologic and cellular therapies holds tremendous potential to revolutionize the practice of medicine. Despite promising early research and clinical results, scientific development of the field has been inadequate. Rapid commercial growth of unregulated products has created a booming but controversial industry, which many have described as the wild, wild west of the medical world.
The field of regenerative medicine and cell therapies had this disconnect of exponential growth driven by consumer demand. People want solutions, and an inability of science and regulatory bodies to keep up with that demand. And that disconnect creates obvious problems that, as industry and clinicians and scientists, we now need to address. Our field was driven by medical devices, which played an important role. But what was happening is we would input a sample into these early phase medical devices. They would process our cell preparation, which would come out the other end of the device, and we didn't know exactly what types of cells and how many cells were in that. We didn't feel that was adequate to continue to develop this field scientifically.
The only way you can really make a decision is to make sure you're talking to people who are on the front line, that are doing the surgeries, they're working the biologics, they're looking at regenerative medicine, they're actually doing the work. Otherwise, you're coming up with a hypothesis that's just a guess.
Public interest in clinical utilization of biologic technologies as therapeutic tools within the broader framework of regenerative medicine has skyrocketed across the world. High consumer demand and the dramatic potential of cellular therapies has led to rapid commercialization of various biologic treatments. Despite this, there is a growing and coordinated effort from physicians, industry, and scientists to create trustworthy and legitimate pathways to bring cutting-edge cellular treatments to patients fairly, safely, and following the rules of evidence-based medicine and compliance with federal regulation.
A lot of our work focuses on examining and studying how these biologic approaches like cell therapy can help treat sports injuries, and that can apply to professional athletes, but frankly the things we learn in our professional and elite athletes applies to our everyday patients. Sports medicine encompasses athletes from early adolescence all the way to people in their 70s and 80s. So sports injuries are common. Things we're learning and taking care of our elite athletes helps inform our ability to take better care of our general athletes, our day-to-day patients.
Stem cells are very important, but they're also rare. If I just take cells from bone or blood and transplant them, transplanting a lot of cells that can't grow, some cells that can grow, but only a small number of true stem cells. So the success of our therapies right now is dependent upon a mixture of cells that are helping the process, but also cells that may be inhibiting or competing with the process.
Research on stem cells have been changing very much over the years. 10 years ago, we couldn't even imagine that this was going to happen so soon.
To address that problem, what we first had to do was figure out how to measure what was in there and then validate that measure, meaning what we were measuring was accurate, so that we can use that data to research and study and publish so that we can learn. What we wanted to do to address the problem is to create a learning model such that every time we produce a biologic product, we learn something. Even if that product is unsuccessful in delivering a positive outcome, we still learn so that we can get better and optimize these therapies over time.
The FDA has a code of federal regulations in which we have to follow, and so what that does is that provides us confounds in which we have to work to help protect patients for patient safety, but also it helps the industry to make sure that it gives us that baseline to be able to collect data and do the research that actually can then advance cellular therapies and the world of regenerative medicine.
With responsible development, advancement of technologies, and proper education of physicians, patients, and policymakers, Greyledge Technologies is focused on data-driven healthcare and biologic technologies that address various pathologies and treatment options for patients.
So one of the choices that we have to make in designing cell therapies is not just choosing to use progenitors or stem cells as part of the therapy, but also choosing whose cells to use. We can use patients' own cells if they have the right population of progenitors and stem cells that we can collect and transplant. But if they don't have it, then we may also go to someone else and transplant someone else's cells.
Everyone wants the promise of stem cells to come true, that we can fix everything with stem cells. Easier said than done, obviously, from a science perspective. But if we create a learning model that can continue to adapt and modify and improve and optimize what we do, every single patient we treat and every single product we produce. And eventually that body of knowledge will allow us to one day get to the point where we can rebuild you from the inside out.
Your care starts with a very strong and compassionate relationship with your physician. And then it's most important for you and your physician to trust Greyledge to make sure that you're protected and that you get the best care, the most effective treatments, and that you feel good afterward.
Stem cells may be important, and progenitor cells that they give rise to may be important, but we don't know that's how the cells are working. And if we tell people we're using stem cell therapy, in my view, we're implying that we know more than we really do.
To be successful in the space from the industry perspective means I don't have all the answers, and I need to surround myself with other people that can help us to get there. That means clinicians and scientists, industry, collaboration with other companies, collaboration with financial vehicles to help drive the resources that are needed to research and develop expensive and very complicated cellular therapies. So we need to think collaboratively when we approach a very complicated solution, which everyone wants. But from a practical perspective, no one person has the answer, and it's going to be an important team of people that will help us drive towards that goal.
There are enough positive results that clearly shows there's great potential in the field, but at the same time, a lot of variability, a lot of unpredictability, and this is why we need further research.
For information about Greyledge Technologies, go to greyledgebiotech.com.